everybody. Well, thank you so much. This is Whiskey Wednesday Weekly. This week, our guest is Wyatt Tyler. Wyatt and I have a pretty interesting story. He's a younger guy. What are you, 27?
Yes,
28? Yeah.
27.
27, and we actually got to meet, ironically, through college, right?
Yep.
So we had a class together. I think it was a business class or English or something like that.
Business, yeah.
And sure enough, he's like... Tell me a little bit about the story.
So I actually remember this super well. So independently of this, I had known your daughter Brooke, and so we had been hanging out for at least a year or more, and I had been talking to you in that business class,
right.
And I remember you sitting in front of me. And it wasn't until almost the end of the semester, and you had a group presentation,
right.
And you're standing up there, and I snuck a picture,
right.
And I sent it to her because I thought, I don't know anyone with the last name of Boone.
Right,
and I said, is your dad's name Ken by any chance? And that's how we figured it out. When you came and sat back down, I was like, Brooke says hi.
Yeah, that was so weird because he's like, and then from there it was just weird because I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, I know your daughter for a while. And then Brooke's like, oh my God, Dad, this is hilarious. That Wyatt texted me and it was hilarious. So anyway, that's kind of how it started. Now Wyatt and I since then, he obviously comes up and I think he sees, Brooke on occasion or whatever. I think we had a couple parties that you've come up here and hung out. But he's obviously a young, career-driven, free spirit, kind of living the dream in Southern California right now.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
See.
Well, you're doing great. I'm just saying, I don't mean free spirit but you have no ties. You're living in a place in PB right now with a roommate. You're kind of living the dream. Running on the beach. And working at a major corporation. Doing what he loves, at least for now. So saying that. Kind of just give us a couple minutes of where you're from and then what you're a little bit about.
Sure thing. So my name's Wyatt Tyler. I'm from here in San Diego, born and raised. Went to high school up here in North County. My parents divorced when I was about 8, and so since then split my time between La Jolla and Escondido and across San Diego. And then my mom moved away to the Caribbean with my stepdad, and since then she's come back and forth to about half the time. And so splitting that time with my dad. And since then, I went to college, did a year up in Mammoth Lakes to go ski.
College? Oh, just to take a year off.
Well, ski and maybe go to school. We'll see. So that didn't turn out super well. Came back and took a few years longer, I think, than I anticipated.
Nice.
But wrapped up school and finished with that. And so mostly right now, my goals are on my career. I'm a project manager at Petco.
Nice.
And mostly that and focusing on my fitness.
Nice. Well, we'll get into all that stuff. Right now, this episode, we're definitely going to focus. If you're wondering what we're going to hit on, Wyatt obviously explained a little bit about it. But being a child of divorce, I'm actually, ironically, my parents divorced at the same age. I was 8 years old. Me and him obviously have a little bit of an age gap, so maybe it affected when the era was. I don't know. It seems like divorce is more prevalent now than it was, when my parents were, in the 70s or whatever it was. And then, fitness, huge fitness guy. Hello. I mean, if you guys know me, I'm a massive fitness guy myself. And then obviously the schooling and, his career and a little bit of his struggles. I mean, he's had some struggles. It sounds like he's lived this catered life. It all sounds like, oh, you live in San Diego, poor you. Your mom moved to the Caribbean, poor you. You have to split your time between La Jolla. And, but that's a part of it all that we all have to understand, that everyone's got their story. Just because you were fortunate enough to live in a beautiful place and your parents may, have done some things that put them in a good situation, you still have things that you have to go through personally, especially an injury. We're going to hit on that too. He had a major injury, and for a physical person, that is a huge setback. Skiing, obviously, is a passion of his. Obviously, talked about Mammoth. I don't know if you knew that. I moved to Colorado Vail.
I did not.
I moved there for 1 year, just like you, to be a ski bum. Right on. But I was 19 years old, so I don't know how old you were at the time.
I was 18,
yeah,
so
17,
perfect.
18, yeah. So we got a little bit of that, and he just found that out. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a life shot, Wyatt told me he's not going to do shots because he doesn't want to make it look bad on screen because he doesn't do shots. but he is going to sip the first thing. We're going to go with the slow and low. It'll be to your left.
Okay.
This one obviously is probably your candied version. It's like an old fashioned in a bottle.
Okay.
So it's got sugar, it's got orange bitters, and basically you're going to love it. So cheers.
Cheers.
And we'll get
Thank
into
you.
this video. Yeah. Now, as the host, I have to do a shot because I'm going to start asking the questions. That's good though, isn't it?
Very smooth.
Isn't it good?
I do taste the orange.
The orange, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's like the most prominent one
Yeah.
for me.
Well, old fashioned is orange bitters, cherry, a little bit of sugar,
Yeah.
and basically whiskey, and
Right
then
on.
water. So what they did was they created it. It's very, very, very good.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites around the house. If you just want something, you don't want a straight whiskey, you just want something with a little bit of a change. It's got good orange notes and it's extremely good.
For whiskey, it's mellow.
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah.
It's very mellow, yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to just get into, I'm going to start my little timer here. Let's see here. Sorry, guys. I had a nice little timer here set for him. And then, of course, I moved on from that.
You gotta hold it against me.
Yeah, so we're drinking water on the side, not whiskey. Not a lot of white whiskeys, if you will. So we're going to start out, talk a little bit about how you as a young man at 8, and so that puts you, what is that, 19 years ago, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 2002.
Okay, so that's weird.
Sorry.
That's all right. So anyway, what not what transpired, because we're going to bring your parents into it, but how did
It's all
it
good.
affect you? Obviously, you were young, so you were in
Yeah.
school. Your parents, it sounds like they still stayed in San Diego for a while.
Yeah,
You said
yeah.
splitting time between the two cities in San Diego.
Yeah, only
So-
about 20 minutes apart, so that
Okay.
was at least relatively manageable.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So did it affect anything? Or I mean, oh, by the way, he is an only child, so
Yeah,
which is a
yeah.
huge difference between myself and other people who go.
Yeah, and I do think you brought up a good point too, talking about being a child of divorce and from a totally different period and being less common, and I think probably, maybe to an extent to my benefit, right? In that, I had a lot of kids my age as well who had already gone through similar things or were going through something similar. So, whether it be to commiserate or at least,
Keep your mind off of it.
yeah, or at least not be ostracized by
Right.
it.
Oh, there
It
you
wasn't so uncommon to be like, my parents are divorced too.
Right.
So I think at least it helped normalize it. It didn't feel quite so weird. I obviously remember it very vividly. It was pretty abrupt, and so there's definitely a time before and a time after. But I got to hand it to my parents, despite the differences that they had to cause that. They really prioritized me, and everything was cordial, and definitely it was there wasn't anything that affected their relationship and the stuff that they dealt with.
Yeah.
They didn't put it on me.
Oh,
that's
that's
what I'm
good.
trying to
Yeah,
say.
yeah, yeah.
So there were certainly it was difficult, I think, at times, but I think that didn't really come until later, until I was like a teenager.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that I think was in hindsight is kind of surprising to think about.
Yeah, and I and listening to you talk about it, I mean, your parents obviously, like I said, we don't want to bring them up so much except give them props for doing a good job
Yeah,
with you
absolutely.
as a son, and also, like you said, kind of protecting them and not dragging you through a process that can be painful for some people.
Yeah, and I definitely have heard that from a lot of friends,
Right.
where things are said, to the kids
Right.
about the ex-spouse.
Sure,
and,
sure.
And I definitely never got that.
Not making it feel like it's your fault
or that.
Yeah, even if
oh my
it's not,
God.
the kid feels like it's my fault. I did something wrong, whatever.
Yeah.
And you always look for answers, especially when you're young.
No
so
doubt.
you have a little bit of heartbreak, and then you kind of said, like you said, you kind of like, okay, we can move on from this, or figure it out, and,
Yeah.
and they're very cordial. And that's huge, especially if they're cordial about it, because there's no dragging through the mud. So take us through, that was 8, right?
Yeah.
I think you had mentioned that you are big into, or were, at a young age, you wanted to somehow, when did you start skiing, and is that obviously
Since
a
I was
passion?
like 3.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so that was something a family thing did?
No doubt, yeah.
Steven?
Both
Okay.
mom and dad, even after they divorced, yeah, that was something that was always very integral to our lives.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So moving into that, where did you see yourself when you had mentioned you thought maybe you want to be a ski instructor, and then
Right.
you said something, I think, in the fact of like, I don't know how that's going to work, and look at me, I'm 50, and you're saying I couldn't ski?
Right. No, I think my, I got to hand it to my parents for having, an ounce of pragmatism and saying, hey, it's admirable that you enjoy skiing that much and that's something that you want to do, but, there's two parts to that is that something that you want to do for your job every day?
Sure.
And then does that, maybe reduce the enjoyment that you get from skiing itself just as a hobby?
Mm-hmm.
But two, is that something sustainable for a career? In other words, it's certainly possible easily. I've skied with people in their 80s, 90s, actually.
Yeah, right.
It's possible. But when you're doing it every day as a job, you certainly open yourself up to risk of just having an occupational injury, and then that threatens your livelihood.
Right.
And so having very few transferable skills, that could be a huge
Oh, I see.
transition.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, okay, this is all I'm leaning on, and if something happens, yeah. Speaking of injury,
Yeah.
was the injury that we're going to get into, was it related to skiing?
It was not, but
Okay.
it was another. Yeah, it was a dirt bike accident.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you were also a desert guy?
I am. Yeah.
And you still are?
Still am.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
Yeah, maybe
all right.
not quite to the same level.
All right,
Not-
well, let's, so 13, 14, I think you had mentioned that that's about when you wanted to look at, that's when your brain went to skiing, or thinking, I could do this for a career, because you were in that stage, that's what you had mentioned, that's kind of where you were at.
I think that was probably, to be honest, the tailwind of probably maybe coming out of the childhood dream,
Okay,
and probably more into the sense of realism that was probably not something I'd want to pursue.
Oh,
Even I
okay.
would be really locked into that. So
because you're kind of
maybe
high
like-
schooly then, so you're thinking
yeah,
a little
right about high school when that hit, I started to realize, that's probably not a legitimate career path
Okay.
based on all of my other goals in life.
Got it.
And
But you still ski today? Do
absolutely.
you snowboard?
Yeah, not really.
So you're skiing.
But I can.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
No, I went to snowboarding and never looked back, and that's why I moved to Vail.
Okay.
Because
Can we
I'm
still be friends?
Yeah, of course. I started out skiing. There's no enemy there. No, it's been a while since I've actually done it. So we're actually going to move on to our next drink.
Right on.
Okay.
I did finish in time.
Yeah, good job. Good job. I'm proud of you. I don't have a lot of water for you, so you better sip that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So this time we have 1792, which is ironically my wife's favorite. It's
Okay.
It's a mid-range bottle. It's a very good bottle. It's definitely not your, you don't see it every day at a bar or something like that. It's not your traditional, but I think you'll like it for just it's a small batch whiskey.
Okay.
And we'll go ahead and toast this one up here. I think you'll like it.
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers. It's still good. It's got a little bit of a bite at the end. You'll
It's
notice it.
definitely more traditional whiskey.
Yeah. But as you taste the next four, that one included,
Mm-hmm.
you'll kind of still taste the difference of each whiskey.
Oh,
like
for
Angel's
sure.
Envy is truly my favorite when it comes out of this table. No offense to all the others, except Slow and Low, which is a different style. But
I was gonna say that. I mean, from the one we just came from to
Yeah.
where we are now, it is night and day.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So I kind of dig the part I didn't know about. First of all, the injury. Right.
Yeah.
But let's go first. You talk about high school and converting, and I think you had mentioned that you did some stuff in high school that was more of a professional. You were like already starting to do some kind of skill.
Yeah, so
said you were doing
and that
some
was
stuff.
actually related to skiing. So there's a huge online forum site that's been around since the late '90s. Shout out to New Schoolers. And so
Okay.
New Schoolers
Never heard that.
is a freestyle ski forum.
Okay.
And so it's essentially a message board where everybody who's into especially you have to think contextually of the late '90s is. Skiers were getting spanked by the snowboarding community as being too
Yes.
traditionalist
Yes.
and whatever. So, this more like urban street style skiing and especially like freestyle backcountry skiing was
Mhm.
becoming more popular. Anyways, brands started to come out of that, and I kind of found an interesting niche of doing small batch photography work and a lot of graphic design, creating vector art for these up and coming companies.
Nice.
And so that was a pretty interesting opportunity to be able to do. Was
Yeah,
be a part
especially as
of
a high school kid.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it was really afforded by, even though I had no real credibility on
Right,
paper,
right.
just that common interest in especially small startup companies that don't have a lot of budget to pull anybody else. that's kind of all the options that they had as
like,
well.
hey, this kid wants to
Yeah.
help out, and he's obviously a skier.
Yep.
So were you in and I know I'm dating myself because I'm sure Glenn Plake was well past your prime.
I'm aware of them.
Yeah, of course. But
Yeah.
who were some of the guys that kind of were like him, but in your prime?
Simon Dumont, Tanner Hall, J.P. Auclair,
Okay.
Types like those were really popular, especially in the early '90s late '90s to early 2000s.
Okay.
Who were some really pioneering people for think of what would become like half pipe skiing
Right.
and to big air that's going on
Yeah.
right now, slope style, things
Okay.
like that.
Yeah.
And especially skiing like off the mountain, like
Mm-hmm.
doing urban edits and things like you would see in a skate film.
Right. Okay.
So,
yeah.
for
Cool.
skiing.
No, I mean, I know that's been there, and I know there's some extreme stuff. I just
Yeah.
didn't know after I left that kind of ski community and always enjoyed watching Glenn Plake and those legends.
Yeah.
And then I went to snowboarding, which of course then were different legends, right?
Yeah.
But I still appreciate watching some of the guys jam on skis because it's still super hard.
Yeah.
For crossing.
Glenn Plake, by the way, is still a local to Mammoth, so I
really?
catch him around every
Oh,
once in a while
really?
on a big mohawk. Yeah. So
That's awesome. Man.
Yeah.
And you lived in Mammoth, you said, for a brief stint.
yeah, for a little over a year.
Okay.
So,
And that
yeah.
was after high school.
Yeah, so just right after high school was kind of winding down, my options for college were limited. There is a community college in Mammoth Lakes,
Okay.
and so that was set up actually by Dave McCoy, who's the founder of Mammoth Mountain.
Okay.
And so he set that up as kind of an opportunity for locals and especially people working for the mountain
Yeah,
as a
to
way
still
to
go to
further their
school.
career
Nice.
and go to school.
Instead of like shoving them down and not giving them a chance to work there. and do
Yeah,
everything.
the entire Eastern Sierras and Owens Valley as a period, as a whole, the education opportunities there, especially if you think about 20 years ago, were
Right.
extremely limited in comparison to what
Isn't
they
that
are
weird?
now. Yeah,
Just 20 years. It's like the
Oh, it's-
phone too.
I
Like
know.
the iPhone, you're like, it's such a short time that it's been around that it's just
It's
completely changed, right?
complete.
And like you said, all these other platforms and
Yeah.
stuff like that is interesting for sure. And you've always mentioned you like photography and things, so that obviously helped.
Absolutely.
Now, let's go to the injury.
Sure.
Because I honestly thought it would be ski related, but you are a
I'm lucky it was.
you are a Southern California kid, and obviously a lot of the Southern California, the desert, and then of course you got the desert, then you got the snow and
Yeah.
the beach, and that's why people love San Diego,
Absolutely.
Southern California in general.
Yeah.
So get us into that. What happened, and just
Sure.
a quick synopsis of that.
Yeah, I mean, even still, injuries, nothing new to me. I've dealt with MCL and ACL tears in both my knees from skiing and fracturing my kneecap skiing.
Yeah.
So skiing has not been kind to me in those aspects, but still worth it.
Sure.
So, I thought I was prepared for a lot of different things and still kind of had that high of invincibility. And was being, not overly rowdy or anything like that, but just wasn't being super careful. And I was following a buddy, and I went over the handlebars of my dirt bike at about 55 miles an hour.
And what size are we talking about?
KTM 500.
Oh, 500. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a big bike.
A big boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And how old were you about then?
I was, 25?
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so
So
this
not
is
that
recent.
long ago.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
So this was 2 years ago. This was this was right as COVID was happening. Right before February of 2020.
Okay.
So we were aware of it. It was on the radar.
Yeah, they called it the Corona, and people
Yeah.
kept saying, "I got the Corona." They have a beer.
Exactly.
I saw all my friends doing that. I'm like, okay, and it
Yeah.
was so pre-me, right? It was so not even a thing. Yeah.
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 So I went over the handlebars of my dirt bike, and I really hurt, and I had to ride home for about 20 miles, and I was absolutely miserable. My buddy had to pick my bike up for me and help me start it. I mean,
Right.
it was miserable.
And you didn't know what happened at the
I
time.
had no idea.
Okay.
I just knew that I landed on a rock. Was the first thing that hit was my hip,
Oh my god.
and I thought, man, that's pretty bad.
That's gonna leave a mark.
Yeah, but I'd already had so much other stuff happen.
Yeah.
that I thought,
It's gonna hurt. I'll be
yeah.
fine. Yeah. Yeah.
And then a week rolled around of still being unable to walk normally.
Oh, geez.
And I was like, so I went to the doctor, got an X-ray, and they're like, "You're fine."
Really?
And I was like, I don't know about that. And so,
you said
long
birthday.
story short, I mean, I went through 6-7 months of PT before they finally approved me for an MRI. I mean, it was miserable.
Oh my God.
So this happened in February of 2020, and I was not actually diagnosed with anything that had happened. I tore my labrum, the cartilage on the female side of your hip socket had torn completely off, and actually crushed the femur, and it had regrown,
Oh, that's gotta be
causing
terrible.
an
Yeah.
impingement.
Yeah, that's insane.
So I ended up not getting surgery until November of 2020. And so
God.
I wasn't really like walking until maybe like February, like a full year had passed, February of 2021.
I did not realize that. And here we are. Like, I think the last time I had seen you prior to that was probably the party that Brooke and them had.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and that to me was interesting because I didn't know. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, we weren't tight, but Brooke didn't even tell me. You know, it's like what? You know, so
Yeah. It wasn't anything that Brooke was like vaguely aware of it.
Sure.
You know,
You
but
were like, hey, I broke my hip.
I didn't really like publicize it too much, and
COVID was going on too, right in the
COVID was
prime.
going
So of
on,
course,
yeah.
everyone thought we're all gonna die, and you were just doing your thing, probably stuck at home anyway.
I was not moving for weeks. I was bedridden.
It was probably a good time to get injured, though.
It was a
Other than the
great
fact the
time. I was
hospital-
not missing
you weren't
out on
missing
anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You didn't feel that bad about it.
Yeah.
So my timer went off, so we are going to drink another whiskey.
Sure, let's
Okay.
do it.
So we're going to get into the Angels Envy the Tall Boy.
Okay.
And this
And
one,
this is your favorite.
it is.
Okay.
It's one of my favorites. It's probably the favorite on this table.
That's sorry. Yeah.
But it's typically what's interesting. I just went to get this the other day.
I noticed it's a bigger pour.
Yeah,
so.
you did you? I like how you picked up on that. So this is normally an $80 bottle.
Okay.
So on the higher low range, I mean, to me, high for everyday people is about
Yeah.
80 to 100 bucks.
Yeah.
But you get into 3, 4. But I'm talking about. I went in there and it was on sale it was up for $49 the other day. And I thought, what's
Sweet.
happening? I don't know if they mismarked it because that's not normally.
Run with
so
it.
I grabbed it. So yeah, you'll dig it for sure.
Cheers.
It's very smooth, well, at least to me. You might not like it. See, it doesn't have the same. It didn't come up like that up here. For me, anyway. Usually, it comes through my.
Yeah,
nose.
and even I would even say just the normal like it feels warmer from the alcohol as opposed to the first.
Right.
But it doesn't have quite that same burn
Yeah,
as the second.
as the other one. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really smooth.
It's very
it tastes
smooth.
good. There's nothing really bad about it. I mean, it's so funny that I tell this story. It's a real short story, but we went out to a girlfriend of my wife's birthday party about 6 years ago. 6 years ago, mind you. And this guy goes, bro, he's behind the bar. He's like, this is a new bottle. He's like, you like whiskey? I'll give you this. I mean, you take a shot of this. It's just, my buddy just released it. It was Angel's Envy.
There you go.
And literally at the start, it's just like my buddy Boone's bourbon.
Yeah.
Starts out early, and then all of a sudden, it just catches fire, and it went from, it was like $39 a bottle to, like I said,
Wow.
80. It's all about marketing and presence, and obviously you have to have a good flavor.
And I feel like it's cool like that, especially for you, when you have like that connection to something where
Yeah.
you catch on to it early and
Yeah.
you have like more of an emotional
Yeah,
connection
that's
to
true.
it.
That's probably what it's
Yeah.
because it was early on.
Yeah. No, that's really awesome.
That's very cool. So, I want to get into a little bit about your struggle since we have 2 shots left in about 15 minutes.
Sure.
So obviously that being a struggle, that's huge, right?
Yeah,
Did
no
you?
doubt.
I mean, obviously. All right, you know what? Let's do this because you've got some school struggles let's go into that first. Then I'll ask you how you kind of, as a person, how you are able to adapt or maybe help other people. Because to me, when you go, it's easy for us to talk about it. It seems like, oh yeah, it's just normal. I've injury skiing. I'm a physical guy. I wrecked my hip on a bike. I like to run.
Yeah.
It took you, I think, 7 years to get your degree, which isn't
Yeah.
that crazy, by the way. I mean, I don't want you to feel like, that's not, especially when you got to move around and then they have an injury for it, all this stuff. But I feel like I just want to hit on what makes you move on. What makes you keep going.
Yeah.
Right? So let's get into that real quick because you do have some stuff we'll hit on the last 2 things.
Sure.
But what makes you continue to, no matter how many times you're injured, and get up and keep going?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably easier said than done because I really, really struggled with it at one point, and an ex-girlfriend can probably attest to this. I really struggled with being legitimately very depressed for a period of time post-injury in that when I was sort of diagnosed say diagnosed, but when they essentially, I don't know
Yeah.
another word for it, it found out that my labrum was torn and the other
The
stuff
bad
had
stuff
happened.
really happened.
Yeah, the news hit. They go, well, there's a surgery, but we haven't really had a time or ability to look into your hip yet. We really have no idea what's going on in there. And given the fact that you've been running around doing all the stuff that you've been doing, I had a very realistic talk with the doctor that said, impact sports for the rest of your life may be off the table completely. Like skiing, running. Yeah, you might be able to surf, but I don't know about without pain. But if I were you, if you're concerned about the longevity of being able to walk, stop running forever.
Wow.
And
I know they always deliver the great news. And you're
Right.
like, what? Why?
Right.
Who do you think we are?
yeah,
as
so
people.
so I didn't really tell anyone that too much because I didn't want to make that my reality.
Right.
And part of I mentioned that I hadn't publicized stuff that was going on. I was harboring a little bit of guilt in terms of feeling sorry for myself because at the same time, one of my close friends that I had lived with for a short period of time, he crashed on his motorcycle as well at about the same time and is still paralyzed.
Oh my.
So it's easier said than done, but I think that was my wake up call for dude, you're still able to live on the second floor of your apartment
Right.
and get up the stairs every day.
Okay.
Be grateful for what you do have.
Mhm.
You might not, you still have the room and the validity to be upset that it's not what you used to have.
Right.
But it, of course, it can always be worse.
Right. That's true.
And I think that was probably one of the things that got me through it the most in terms of, be glad for any progress that you can get and be glad for whatever it is that you do have, no matter how small it might feel, because you're here and you've got to deal with it, accept it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the hardest part was just really trying to accept a new reality.
Right.
And I'm extremely grateful in that I'm almost completely back to where I was.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a long period of time where I wasn't sure that would ever happen for me.
Well, that's what I want to say because he posts his runs and stuff, and obviously I'm like a 9-minute mile guy. He's flying at 6.18, 6.18 for 5K, and I'm like, oh, okay, gee. So, but I guess my thing is, and that's youth, obviously. I mean, and plus that's his thing. He's got some long ass legs. So for me, I feel like I like the fact that you are saying that what you just said is that you're almost back to 100%, and you didn't let that be a reality because I feel like so many people get the bad news from the doctors, and I don't know why they always deliver that. Why give them the worst? Just say, hey, you know what? This might be a thing, but ultimately you probably could if you work hard enough. That should be someone's mindset.
I think because at least to their credit, to their defense, at that point in time, there was still some unknowns in terms of that I had obviously exacerbated that injury by I was still trying to run. I was trying to do all. You can go look on Strava. You can see I have a couple runs in there. I had some really cryptic messages where I'm like, 4 miles, way slower than normal. A lot of pain, and I had no idea yet.
Yeah.
And
You're running out of
and
breath.
I had to keep stopping, and it's just it was not good.
It wasn't
And they're
working.
like, you need to stop that.
Yeah.
Or you're gonna make this way worse,
Yeah.
and you're
And it's hard for someone like
No.
myself too.
no doubt.
You are not trained to sit. That's just
No.
your mindset is. That's not me. I want a
Yeah.
motor. I have a motor. I want to run. I want to be free. I want to hike. I want to camp. All that stuff. Whatever.
all the stuff.
And then when you're like, I'm just going to push through it, which is something
And they're
in your
telling me,
body,
"Don't
and they're
do
saying
that."
don't do that. You
Yeah.
actually really have to go. Okay, you probably should listen to them to a degree.
Yeah.
Because this is their.
But to your point, the news is hard to accept. But so at that point in time, they're just trying to at least prevent it from getting
Right.
worse. So I do internalize that, and like I said, I'm extremely fortunate that the news turned around and got way better.
Right, but it was
So,
because of your it was
yeah.
your persistence. I feel like it's easier to go the other way. I
No
feel like
doubt.
it's easy for someone to say, "I give up."
Yeah, and
Sit on it.
there really was a point in time though, especially right before the surgery and then afterwards, where I was sitting on the couch just working every day, and my ex-girlfriend was like, come at least just walk down the sidewalk with me, go outside. I wouldn't go outside for several days on end.
Oh.
So it was not good.
Yeah.
But And that was where
That was what you said. That was
that
before
was
that
where
turning point when you said
when I
yeah.
really had to internalize and accept, you know what, like, dude, it could be
Get
so
off
much
your
worse.
ass.
Come on,
Yeah,
stop
yeah.
feeling sorry
Stop
for
being a
yourself.
baby.
Yeah.
I know. There is, and I mean, I've had some stuff, not that kind of injury stuff, but you know,
Yeah.
just things that you just eventually have to get the f up. You know, let's
Yeah.
move on. Yeah. Well, sadly, well, not for me, but our timer went off, and so we have to have another.
I'm struggling to keep up. I'm struggling. You can see it
You're
now.
doing great. You're doing great. Just a couple more questions. Let's go with Elijah Craig.
Okay.
Which again,
This one I know.
This one's small. Oh, you do.
Yeah.
Look at you.
Yeah.
Is it? Why is that?
Okay, so do you know Aero Bar down in off India by the airport? So there's a huge. We're going.
Okay.
There's a huge bar down in.
It's huge, really?
I wouldn't say it's huge.
No, but it's a good one.
They've got something like 3,000 different types of whiskeys.
Aero Bar?
Mm-hmm.
Is it off by the airport?
Aero Club Bar.
Because it's by the airport. Is that what the Aero?
Because so right over not Bankers Hill. Maybe,
Okay. Where they fly in?
Right where they fly in. So India Street, as it follows next to the 15, it's right there in the direct line of sight of the airport.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
So-
you just know this.
So that's what I had there.
Oh, okay. So
there's my origin
I don't
story.
have it at my house. I had that once at that bar.
That's what I remember.
There
Cheers.
you go.
Thank
Well,
you.
it's good. I think you'll like it. Still good, but like I said, it's in between these two.
It's more of an initial bite
Right.
than the last one.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
But not as much as that one. It's like
Yeah.
I said, it kind of falls between the angel
Somewhere in
and the
between.
17 and
Yeah,
18.
yeah.
But again, this one normally about a $60 bottle.
Okay.
Went there the other day. It was $39.99. I'm gonna shit myself. Not literally, but that's weird.
I hope not. Yeah. It's
I
okay
just
if
was
you
like,
did.
I don't know what happened. I'm like, I got lucky one day because these are normally bottles. I mean, I went and got 12 bottles of whiskey because I was low on, stock.
As you do.
And I should. Yeah, I should get more. Yeah, Mila is unhappy with she still wants more. So, it's like, babe, I don't have I'm just not like a walking, money tree where I just shit out money for whiskey all the time. I have to pace myself.
Exactly.
But it is very good, yeah. Okay, so we're going to move on so you work at Petco Park, not Petco Park, sorry, Petco the company.
Yep.
And what do you do for them? Just curious.
So I have a very interesting position that kind of started out with, I used to work for the IT department.
Okay.
Started out kind of as an intern position while I was still in school.
Mm-hmm.
And COVID hit,
Okay.
and I was a project manager intern within the IT department,
Okay.
and so I was specializing especially within change management for some teams that were trying to transition kind of essentially how they work.
Okay.
So as that happened, COVID hit, and the legal department was and still is kind of the intake center for everything to do with all of the stores and how they handle being compliant in terms of how they operate on a legal level.
All right.
And they just had right when we started, they just had an email inbox, and that was it. And so they got from 1,500 stores, help!
Yeah.
We have no idea
Right.
how to stay up and running legally. We got to have plexiglass shields. All
this
the
is
people
all
have
the
to have.
COVID
This
stuff.
is
Yeah,
right
yeah,
as COVID hits.
yeah.
And so that was as too. Petco was fighting to stay even open at all
Right.
as a mandatory business.
Mm-hmm.
And so we fought for that in that we're like, hey, we're literally a grocery store for pets.
Right.
That's kind of,
That's critical.
we're a major outlet for how people feed their pets and keep them alive.
Yeah, that would be dumb if they tried to
Yeah,
fix it.
so that one was a fairly easy fight,
Yeah.
but we still had to have masks, PPE, gloves, disinfectant. We had to keep, store limitations, and that was all dependent on the national, state, local levels all had contradicting
Yes.
legality on
Right,
how
right.
they were supposed.
So
when
every
they're-
store,
every
because
store-
this is a nationwide company.
not only nationwide, we're in like Puerto Rico, in
Oh, okay.
Mexico, and Canada. We're in all sorts of different places. So they're, all the general managers and regional managers are asking us, or telling us
Right.
what we need. So I stepped in with my boss at the time into the legal department, and we gave them some processes to be able to even handle it and and essentially create like a ticketing system.
Okay.
So that as requests came in, we had the ability to follow something as, a request comes in, the request has been handled, they've gotten what they've needed, and then it's closed.
Nice.
So on and so forth. So, and obviously I could go way more into that.
Sure,
but
no,
that's the gist of it.
Yeah.
And so I've been in the legal department ever since because there's a ton of other processes that they do and that they need help on, and software and all sorts of things. So I'm coming at it from more of a business-oriented and especially IT-oriented mindset to give them, tools that they need to operate efficiently.
Very cool. I
Yeah.
mean, and I didn't know you were in the legal department. So without really, throwing, you're not throwing Pecco under the bus. I mean, like your future there, is this, you could actually, I mean, it's a big company.
Yeah.
Are you, is this like, I know you're happy there because they're paying you and you have a good job, and it sounds like
Pay helps.
you're on the bigger, spectrum.
For sure.
It's not like you
Yeah.
started with some, small company, you were the big company.
Absolutely.
I mean, is this something you want to do forever?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always obviously open to other and all opportunities. I definitely enjoy change and I enjoy new challenges, but I definitely am shocked at the constant variation of how many differing projects there are in terms of the types of things that they handle, and the fact that, there's like 30 something people that work in my department alone.
Wow.
That I help oversee.
Yeah.
And we use like 15 different systems, and a lot of them I've never seen before.
Huh.
And as someone who has a lot of background in IT,
Right.
to see all these different systems I've never heard of, it definitely is hard to be bored.
That's cool.
So yeah, I enjoy it.
and you're young.
Yeah.
I mean,
And there's
started my
tons of upward growth opportunities for me.
I've been
so I
in my
love it.
company for 21 full years,
Wow.
and I'm 50. So I started at, was that 29?
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm just
I'm
about
super
there.
happy. I mean, you're 27.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's not like the worst thing you could do.
No, don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
I'm not.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know. I'm saying this, but
Yeah.
you still have a chance to, like you said, grow, morph, and you're at the beginning stage. Even though you're at a company that's been around a while,
No
you're
doubt.
at a beginning stage of just things morphing and changing with technology and everything.
Yep.
I mean, it's just crazy. So the last thing I want to do before we do our last drink is I want you to talk a little bit about your struggles.
Sure.
With school. So,
Yeah.
we talked about it before. It took him 7 years, and again, that's not like Van Wilder kind of. I mean, I wish it was probably. You wish it was probably more like Van Wilder.
I wish.
Style,
Yeah,
right?
my experience was not quite that. Only the time.
Right, the time. That's what I mean. But you wish it was more like, damn, that was a pretty good movie. That guy looked like he had fun. But I do want to focus on that because so much of it surrounds. If it's 7 years and you're 27 and you went from high school and the successful, like helping the ski community and this other company do what you did, and then 7 years of college and going and wrecking your hip and just being you, right?
Yeah.
What took you so long? What were the struggles? And he posted something on Instagram when he finally got his degree that kind of hit me like, oh, other than taking 7 years, what was tough about it? So go ahead and just tell us that before we wrap up.
Yeah, I mean there are all sorts of things, and I will have to say, obviously a major shout out to my parents, my friends, girlfriends. Many of them giving me massive amounts of support and encouragement. Financially, mentally, all sorts of different avenues to where I know for a fact that had I truly been on my own, there's no way I could have done it myself.
Oh, that's
So,
good to know.
even with that said, I think just, coming out of high school, it was so different, and suddenly having to manage finances, my time. Yeah, I mean, it's
No,
a
I
big,
only laugh because I know
and-
like Brooks going through it. It takes a
Right?
while. I
It
mean,
takes a long
especially in
time.
California.
yeah, oh my God. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to do the whole ramen bootstrap story, but there was
There
definitely,
was ramen bootstraps.
yeah, I mean, no, there was
Peanut butter.
Yeah, one of my best friends, there was a point in time where he and I were kind of in between places for like 6 months.
Yeah.
We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment
Yeah.
with 7 other guys. I mean, it was disgusting.
Yeah.
So you know, and I
I
mean,
like
even
what you said, it was disgusting.
it really was. I mean, you got to be
think
realistic.
about it, like who's doing dishes,
Yeah,
right?
five dudes to a single bathroom. It was not good.
Yeah, and no one's cleaning it.
Right? Yeah, it's always someone else's problem.
Exactly.
So, you know, and you know, I had tons of help along the way, but in those kind of intermediate periods where I was in between jobs, trying to pay for rent, trying to pay for school,
Yeah.
you know, it's not unique to me by any stretch of the
No.
imagination, but
Well, that's what we're here. We're here to inspire someone who's going through it, going like, am I really going to get through this?
I struggled with it.
Yeah.
I think the hardest part was especially being in like the community college phase,
Yeah.
and just feeling like that was never going to end.
Yeah.
And when that finally ended, and I was kind of in some upper division courses where
Right.
I was like, I could see the end in sight, and they were classes that I was legitimately starting to get really interested in, and they were hard, but they were hard in a way that was challenging and fun, and that I was like, okay, I can actually see this applicable to my career
Yeah.
that I couldn't with all the general ed stuff.
Okay.
The general ed stuff was easier, but because it was easier and because it had nothing to do with me,
Right.
I gave it, I think, a lot less attention, and so my attention was focused a lot on different sports, or a lot of times like bullshit jobs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And jobs that I thought, you know, I was working for like startups, and I thought, oh, if this takes off, I won't even have to finish college. I could
Right.
retire on
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And really kind of neglecting the reality of like, what's the odds that this startup does
Exactly.
take off?
Right.
And
Why don't you
yeah.
work through it? And if it happens, great. But you don't want to give it up. Right?
Exactly.
The school part. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So-
I love that part for sure. Because I didn't actually finish. I joined the military after
Yep.
starting school, and then I'm like, well, I'll go in the military, and that was my school.
Yep.
And then obviously I had to take some classes for work, and that's how we met. So we're gonna do a last one. And now this is my. It's like a running joke in my house because my wife loves the Dickel. That's what it's called. It's called Dickel's phone. It's a 12-year.
It's code.
Yeah, it is. It is. But it's George Dickel. It's a 12-year. They have an
Okay.
8. They have a standard. It's really good stuff. So see what you think after you've drank these other ones. This one's about $19.99, but it is extremely good. So try it out.
Right on.
See
Thank
that?
you. Cheers.
And no offense, but that's just good price. Isn't that smooth?
It is smooth. I mean, I
You're
have to
still
agree with
Angel
you.
Envy.
Your favorite is my favorite so far.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would put this maybe somewhere between our second and fourth,
Yeah.
Elijah Craig and
1792.
1792.
The fact that you said second and fourth, you're still good to go. Like you actually said between your second and fourth, and you pulled it out.
Hey, I remember.
That's
so,
what I mean. You're good. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that.
Isn't
I
that
like
good?
that, yeah.
I mean, for an everyday. That's more your everyday. Like you're not gonna drink it in like 2 days and be like, oh, I'm broke. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Exactly.
You don't want to drink like an $80 bottle in like a week.
No, you got me there in terms of, you know, without a doubt, value
Yeah,
proposition.
yeah, right.
So,
You're big on that. It
yeah.
sounds like that's your career. So wrapping up, I want to kind of talk a little bit about, I know that you're going through some stuff, personally, that I want to bring up.
No worries.
But you're more than willing to bring stuff up. But he's going through some stuff. Well, he not personally, but he's got some things on the other side that we don't want to hit on. But I think those things that you're going through and that you have gone through bring up kind of what your philosophy is and how you feel as a person. I mean,
Sure.
Here's the thing: as a 27-year-old, I was married, had Brooke at the time.
Wow.
The boys were born. I think, yeah.
Wow.
So,
Okay, that puts it in perspective.
And so for me, looking at you and being, hey, got a Petco job, went through 7 years of school, broken hip, running, And by the way, again, back to his physical stuff. He's like he wants to do what I do. Like not as a follow. I'm just saying he's 27. He wants to hike. He wants to run. He wants to be active.
No doubt.
Very active guy. I appreciate that because that wasn't really my thing at a younger age. Even though I was always active with skiing and stuff, I wasn't like, oh, I want to go hiking and climb rocks, and that's kind of what I do now.
Right.
Because the kids, I started young, right? The kids, right?
Yeah.
So let's go into what your last thoughts are. Like, what makes you tick? What is it that you would love to tell somebody? Like, hey, after all this and all the stuff I go through, even at a young age, this is what I'd love to have someone, like believe in or understand.
I think definitely within the last year, if not more, I'm really starting to internalize mortality.
Okay. Good call. I was gonna say life, right?
Life in general.
Like living and dying. Yeah.
Yeah, but especially from the perspective, I know it's such a trope, it's such a cliche. It's just that that life is short, and really feeling that now in terms of from injury, from family, from friends, especially people that have come and gone, in terms of relationships, etc. Is that there's the fleeting sense of permanency,
Mm-hmm.
and to really not harbor grudges or judgment, and to take every day as a new day, and to enjoy it. And so I mean, I'm really trying my best to adhere to that philosophy myself, and it's way easier said than done.
Yeah. Well, I'm not stopping him, but I want to kind of take a second to say that, does anyone else notice how well articulated he is? I mean, you're well articulated. Your vocabulary is exceptional. I mean, you use great, words, and I feel like that the fact that what you're going through now and I mean, believe me, that's how I live.
Yeah.
That's how I feel like what we're doing.
Yeah.
It all started because I'm like, why the fuck not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, why not just get to know people? I'm not trying to be famous. I just feel like getting to talk to people and hear their story only betters me, because I could learn from that and maybe go, whoa, that person changed me. And not just that, but make connections and meet people that you've never met before.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And like you said, I love the part where you're like, life is short. I mean, bro, I'm not that guy that does the whole blink and your kids get old and blink and you'll be 50. I'm not that guy.
Yeah.
Because like you'll be the same way I am. I feel like you're gonna be like enjoying life the entire time. Don't like not do the things you want to do, because you're already doing them. So you're gonna be like, dude, I crushed it at 50. Before 50, I was did this, I did that. Because you didn't wait until you're 50 to start doing stuff, right? You're enjoying life through the process, and so I just commend you for already being like. It's funny, we've only like hung out like 3 times,
right? Yeah.
But we have like this, like dynamic. And what's weird is now, like the whole you moved to Mammoth, I moved to Vail,
right? There's a lot of parallels.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'd love to meet your father. That'd be cool. How old is he, by the way?
He is 63.
Okay, so
he was 36 when he had me.
Okay, and when Brooke's 27, I'll be 53. So okay, yeah, it was 10 year.
Yep.
Yeah. So I just want to take a second to thank you again for being on the show.
Yeah.
And it was fun, and we appreciate you guys tuning in, and make sure that you guys check it out. Wyatt Tyler. Follow him on Instagram. What is your Instagram?
Wyatt.raw.
Wyatt.raw. That's right. I just looked up Wyatt. I don't really pay attention to his name at this point.
No worries.
You don't have Facebook?
I think I last was on Facebook in 2014.
Okay, so don't look at him there. It's just Wyatt.raw. And he's a good follow. He crushes his runs. He's very interesting. And we'll see you guys later. Peace.
Thank you.
Thanks. That was a good job, man.